Legally, they call it a duty to warn. The obligation to tell someone they are in danger. But when I discovered my husband was a walking biohazard sleeping with my entire support system, I decided my only duty was to myself. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a part. And let me know in the comments below. Have you ever stayed in a relationship hoping the other person would change? Let's get started. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom I had painted barely 6 months ago, a soft shade of sage meant to induce tranquility. Instead, the room was now the epicenter of a violent emotional earthquake. My husband, Derek, was moving beneath the expensive Egyptian cotton sheets we had registered for together. But he wasn't alone. Beneath him was Tasha, my friend of 6 years, her face turned toward the window, eyes squeezed shut in what looked like ecstasy. Her red dress, a garment I had helped her zip up in a department store dressing room just last month, lay crumpled on the hardwood floor like a pool of spilled wine. It was next to Derek's work slacks. The intimacy of their discarded clothes was almost as offensive as the act happening in the bed. They didn't hear me. The flight from Chicago had landed 3 hours early, a stroke of luck I had initially thought was a blessing. I had taken an Uber instead of calling Derek for a pickup, wanting to surprise him. I should have called. I should have given him the warning he never gave me. I pulled out my phone, my hands possessing a terrifying, icy steadiness. A coldness had spread from my chest to my fingertips, numbing the tremors that should have been there. I switched the camera to video. It made no sound as I recorded 10 seconds of their betrayal. Then, I took 3 high-resolution photos. I needed proof. I needed reality to be captured because my brain was already trying to reject what my eyes were seeing. I backed away slowly, carefully. My feet remembered which floorboards creaked, the third one from the door, the loose board near the hallway runner. I navigated the minefield of my own home with the stealth of a thief. I made it to the kitchen before my breathing betrayed me, turning ragged and gasping. The kitchen counter felt biting cold under my palms. I stared at the marble surface Derek and I had picked out 2 years ago. We'd laughed that day, arguing over vein patterns like it mattered. We had acted like we were building a forever, brick by brick, slab by slab. I made coffee. It was a mundane, robotic action. The machine gurgled and hissed, a mechanical noise that finally masked the silence of the house. Upstairs, the movement stopped. I heard the frantic shuffle of footsteps. Whispers. Then, heavier, faster steps. The front door opened and closed softly. Tasha was leaving. She was fleeing the scene of the crime. Derek came downstairs 20 minutes later. His hair was wet from a shower, combed back in the way I used to love. He smelled of soap and deception. "Hey babe, you're home early." He smiled at me, that practiced, easy smile that had charmed me on our first date. "How was the trip?" I forced the muscles in my face to mirror his expression. It felt like wearing a mask made of lead. "It was good. The presentation went well." "That's great." He kissed my forehead. His lips felt like a brand. "I'm glad you're home." I watched him pour coffee into his favorite blue mug. The same mug he'd likely been drinking from this morning before he called Tasha. "Me too," I lied. That night, I lay awake while Derek snored beside me, peaceful and content in his ignorance. I stared at the ceiling shadows, replaying the video in my mind. I picked up my phone and opened Instagram. Tasha had posted a photo 3 hours ago. It was her and Brianna at a coffee shop, both smiling, lattes in hand. The caption read, "Coffee with my girl. Love our talks." Something about the timestamp bothered me. 3 hours ago, Tasha was in my bed. The photo was a decoy. A pre-planned alibi. I began to scroll. I went through Tasha's feed, then Brianna's, then Nicole's. These were my 3 closest friends. The women who had stood by me at my wedding. The women I confided in. I began to see the matrix of lies. I saw dates that lined up too perfectly. Days when all three of them posted about being busy with work when I tried to make plans. Times when Derek had worked late, and their social media showed them at home, alone, with vague captions about self-care nights. I spent the next week turning into a spy in my own marriage. I waited until Derek was in the shower to check his phone, memorizing his passcode from the greasy smudge patterns on the screen. What I found shattered what little denial I had left. There were messages. Not just with Tasha, but with Brianna. And with Nicole. All three of them. The texts were nauseating. Derek telling Brianna how she was more exciting than me. Derek promising Nicole he was leaving Naomi soon. Derek sending Tasha photos that made my stomach churn. The most twisted part was that none of them knew about each other. Derek was tripling his betrayal, telling each woman she was the special one, the only one. I copied everything. Every damning thread, every nude photo, every email. I backed it up to a cloud drive Derek didn't know existed. I screenshotted bank statements showing hotel rooms and jewelry stores. Then, I made an appointment with my doctor. I need to be tested, I told Dr. Patterson. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had been my physician for years. She didn't ask why, just nodded with a grim understanding. Of course. We'll run a full panel. The waiting was a purgatory. 5 days of pretending. 5 days of cooking dinner, asking Derek about his day, and sleeping next to a man who made my skin crawl. Dr. Patterson called on a Tuesday. Naomi, I need you to come in. Today. When I sat across from her, she didn't mince words. You've tested positive for chlamydia. The word hung in the sterile air. I had expected it, yet hearing it felt like a physical blow. It's treatable, she continued quickly. A simple course of antibiotics. But we need to contact any sexual partners from the last 6 months. They need to be tested and treated too. My husband, I said, my voice hollow. Has he had symptoms? No. Nothing. Dr. Patterson nodded. Men can be asymptomatic carriers. They have the infection but show no signs. He could be spreading it without knowing. She paused, looking at me with pity. Has he been faithful? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. No. He hasn't. Then he needs to be tested immediately. And anyone else he's been intimate with. Untreated chlamydia can cause pelvic inflammatory disease, PID, in women, chronic pain, and permanent infertility. I sat there, absorbing the nuclear fallout of my marriage. Derek hadn't just broken my heart. He had endangered my body. He had put my future at risk for his ego. And he was currently doing the same to Tasha, Brianna, and Nicole. I'll start the treatment, I said. But I'm not telling him yet. Naomi, Dr. Patterson warned, partners need to be notified. Give me 2 weeks, I said, my voice turning steely. I need to get my affairs in order. 2 weeks. She studied me, then sighed. 2 weeks. After that, I have a legal obligation to report for contact tracing. I walked out of that office with a prescription and a secret. Derek was a biological weapon, and my 3 former best friends were in the blast zone. The pharmacy was across town, in a neighborhood where nobody knew the name Naomi Anderson. I handed over the prescription with a hand that didn't shake. I swallowed the first dose of antibiotics in my car, washing the bitter pill down with lukewarm bottled water. It felt like swallowing a secret. I drove home, the familiar streets looking distorted, like a funhouse mirror reflection of the life I used to have. When I walked through the door, Derek was on the couch, watching a game. Hey, hon. You're late, he said, not looking away from the screen. Doctor's appointment, I said, testing the waters. Everything okay? Fine. Just a routine checkup. Everything is perfect. He finally looked at me, smiling that boyish smile. Good. I ordered pizza. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the efficient professional, But during every break, I was dismantling my marriage. I hired attorney Rodriguez, a shark in a silk blouse who specialized in high-asset divorces and scorched earth policies. I have evidence, I told her during our consultation, laying the stack of printed screenshots on her mahogany desk. Adultery, financial dissipation, and medical negligence. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow as she flipped through the file. The medical part is sticky. You know he's infected? Yes. And he doesn't know. And the other women? They don't know either. Rodriguez paused, tapping her pen against her lip. Legally, you have no duty to warn his mistresses. They aren't your partners. But practically, if they get sick, this could get messy. They are already sick, I said, staring at a framed diploma on her wall. They just don't know it yet. Derek is the carrier. He's reinfecting them every time he sees them. And you're okay with that? She asked, not judging, just assessing. They slept with my husband in my bed, I said. They smiled at me at brunch while he was sending them nudes. They don't get my protection. Rodriguez nodded. Okay. Then we move fast. Separate accounts. Secure the assets. We blindside him before he realizes he's sick. I followed her instructions with military precision. I moved half our joint savings into a private account. I changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance. I documented every minute Derek spent away from home, cross-referencing it with the women's social media activity. It was masochistic watching them. I saw Tasha post about feeling under the weather and staying in bed. I saw Brianna complain about cramps from hell on her story. I saw Nicole mention a fever that wouldn't break. The infection was taking hold. The bacteria was doing the work that my anger wanted to do. Every time guilt tried to rise in my throat, I remembered the messages. Brianna calling me boring and frigid. Nicole asking Derek when he would finally dump the dead weight. Tasha sending a photo of herself wearing my necklace, a necklace I couldn't find last month. They had dehumanized me. They had turned me into an obstacle, a joke. So I turned off my empathy. I treated my antibiotic regimen like a countdown clock. On the 14th day, Dr. Patterson's deadline was looming. I had finished my course of medication. I was clean. I was safe. It was a Tuesday morning. Derek was in the kitchen, making a smoothie. He looked tired. Dark circles rimmed his eyes. I've been feeling weird lately, he muttered, rubbing his lower back. Achy. Maybe you're coming down with something, I said, sipping my coffee. Stress, probably. Yeah, maybe. Derek, I said, setting my mug down on the marble counter. The sound was a sharp clack. I need to tell you something. He looked up, sensing the shift in my tone. What? I'm leaving. He blinked. Leaving? Like, for a work trip? No. I'm leaving you. I'm moving out today. The movers will be here in an hour to take my things. He laughed, a nervous, confused sound. Naomi, what are you talking about? Is this a joke? I know about Tasha, I said calmly. And Brianna. And Nicole. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a magic trick. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I know everything, Derek. I have the photos. The texts. The bank statements. I know you've been sleeping with my 3 best friends simultaneously for 6 months. Naomi, wait, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You're a cliché. A greedy, sloppy cliché. I stood up. But that's not the only reason I'm leaving. I can fix this, he stammered, stepping toward me. We can go to counseling. I'll cut them off. It meant nothing. It meant something to my health, I said. You gave me chlamydia, Derek. He froze. What? You're an asymptomatic carrier. You've been spreading it to everyone you sleep with. Me. Tasha. Brianna. Nicole. We all have it. His eyes went wide with horror. Oh my God. I've been treated, I said, checking my watch. I'm cured. But you? You're a walking biohazard. And so are they. You knew, he whispered. How long have you known? 2 weeks. And you didn't tell me? You didn't tell them? Why would I? I picked up my purse. They wanted you so badly. They can have you. And everything you come with. I walked out the front door just as the moving van pulled up. I didn't look back at the house, or the man standing in the kitchen. Realizing his life was burning down around him, I checked into a downtown hotel, a sleek high-rise with anonymous hallways and room service that operated 24 hours a day. It was a fortress of solitude. I needed distance. I needed walls between me and the explosion I had just detonated. My phone began to buzz 10 minutes after I left the house. First Derek. Then Tasha. Then Brianna. Then Nicole. I watched the names flash on the screen like a roll call of my former life. I didn't answer. I let the vibrations rattle against the glass table of the hotel room, a physical manifestation of their panic. Attorney Rodriguez called an hour later. He's been served, she said, her voice crisp. He tried to refuse the papers, but the processor dropped them at his feet. It's done. Did he say anything? He's claiming he wants to talk. He says it's a misunderstanding. Rodriguez let out a dry chuckle. They always say that. Stand your ground, Naomi. Direct all communication through me. But Derek was persistent. He showed up at my office building the next day. Security called up, sounding nervous. Mrs. Anderson, your husband is in the lobby. He's distressed. He says it's a medical emergency. I weighed my options. Having him dragged out by police would cause a scene, fueling office gossip that was surely already percolating. I'll come down, I said. I found him pacing by the elevators. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 30 hours. Naomi, he breathed when he saw me rushing forward. I stepped back, maintaining a 6-foot barrier. 5 minutes, I said coldly. Outside. We walked to a small concrete park across the street. The city noise, honking taxis, construction drills, provided a chaotic soundtrack to our conversation. I went to the doctor, Derek blurted out as soon as we stopped. I tested positive. Just like you said. I know. I called them, Naomi. I had to call them. Tasha. She's really sick. She was screaming at me. She's in pain. Brianna too. That sounds painful, I said, my voice void of inflection. How could you do that? He looked at me with genuine horror, as if I were the villain. You knew for 2 weeks. You let them get sicker. You let me keep infecting them. You made the choice to sleep with them, I countered. You made the choice to lie to me every single day. You put my health at risk first. I just declined to save you from your own mess. This isn't about me. It's about them. They could have permanent damage. They should have thought about that before they slept with a married man, I snapped, my composure cracking just a fraction. They gambled, Derek. They bet my marriage against a few nights of fun. They lost. You're heartless, he spat. I don't even recognize you. Good. The woman you recognized was a doormat. She's gone. I'm not signing those divorce papers, he threatened. I'm going to fight you for everything. The house, the savings. And I'm going to tell everyone what you did. How you let people rot. Go ahead, I said, stepping closer to him, my eyes hard. Tell everyone. Tell them how you contracted the STD in the first place. Tell them about the 3 affairs. Tell the judge. See how much sympathy you get. I turned and walked away. My heart was hammering against my ribs, adrenaline flooding my system. I felt nauseous, but I also felt a dark, twisted power. I had taken control of the narrative. That evening, the text messages changed tone. They shifted from confusion to rage. Tasha. You monster. I'm at the ER. The doctor says I have PID. How could you not warn me? Brianna. I know you saw my posts. You knew I was sick. I thought we were friends. Nicole. Derek told us everything. You're going to pay for this. I read them all. I didn't delete them. I screenshotted them. Evidence. Later that night, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Is this Naomi Anderson? A woman's voice, professional and strained. Yes. This is Dr. Singh from County Hospital. I have a patient here, Tasha Williams. She has you listed as her emergency contact. I closed my eyes. Tasha hadn't changed her paperwork since my surgery 3 years ago. I'm not her emergency contact anymore. Mrs. Anderson, she's asking for you. She's in significant distress. The infection has caused severe inflammation. We're admitting her. I can't help you, I said. Call her mother. Or call Derek Anderson. He's the one responsible for her condition. Mrs. Anderson, please. I hung up. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the silence of the room pressing in on me. Tasha was in the hospital. My actions, or rather my inaction, had consequences that were now escalating beyond a simple revenge fantasy. Real people were in hospital beds. I ordered room service, pasta with a bright marinara sauce, but I couldn't eat it. I sat by the window, watching the city lights, wondering if the redness of the sauce reminded me too much of Tasha's dress, or the blood I imagined was on my hands. The next morning, the gravity of the situation shifted from interpersonal drama to potential legal catastrophe. Attorney Rodriguez called me at 7 a.m. We have a problem, she said, skipping the pleasantries. Derek's lawyer contacted me. They're floating the idea of a duty-to-warn lawsuit. Is that a real thing? I asked, gripping the hotel phone. Usually it applies to doctors or therapists. But in civil court? They can argue negligence. They're saying you knowingly endangered their health with malicious intent. With Tasha hospitalized, and now Brianna admitted this morning too, it looks bad, Naomi. It looks vindictive. It was vindictive, I admitted. We don't say that out loud, Rodriguez snapped. Ever. The narrative is, you were processing the trauma, you were afraid of Derek, you were securing your safety before engaging. Got it. Got it. But the universe has a way of forcing confrontations. That afternoon, the hospital administration called. Not a doctor, but a risk management officer. Mrs. Anderson, we have a unique situation. We have 3 patients, Ms. Williams, Ms. James, and Ms. Torres, all admitted with complications from the same strain of infection. They have identified your husband as the source. We need to conduct a contact tracing interview with all parties to ensure this outbreak is contained. I've been treated. I'm negative, I said. We understand. But the doctor requesting the meeting believes it would be beneficial for the mental and physical recovery of the patients if the source of the information delay was clarified. They are highly agitated. I should have said no. My lawyer would have screamed at me to say no. But a morbid curiosity, mixed with a heavy leaden guilt, made me agree. I wanted to see them. I needed to see the reality of what I had done, and what had been done to me. I drove to the hospital in a daze. The sterile smell of antiseptic triggered a wave of nausea as I walked to the conference room on the 3rd floor. They were there. All of them. Derek sat at the far end of the table, head in his hands. Tasha was in a wheelchair, wearing a hospital gown, looking pale and gaunt. Brianna sat next to her, and 4-line taped to her hand. Nicole was the only one in street clothes, but she looked feverish and leaned heavily against the wall. Dr. Singh stood at the head of the table. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Anderson. The room was thick with hatred. If looks could infect, I would have been dead in seconds. You knew, Tasha rasped. Her voice was weak, lacking its usual bubbly vibrancy. You knew for 2 weeks. I was bleeding, Naomi. I was in so much pain. I know, I said, standing near the door. I didn't sit. Why? Brianna asked, tears streaming down her face. We were friends. Best friends. Friends don't sleep with their best friend's husband, I said quietly. Friends don't mock their best friend in texts while sending nudes to her partner. The room went silent. They realized I had seen the messages. We made a mistake, Nicole argued, her voice trembling. We made a horrible, selfish mistake. But you played God with our bodies. You let a disease eat us from the inside out. Derek gave you that disease, I pointed out, gesturing to my husband who wouldn't look up. He's the carrier. He's the cheater. I just stepped out of the way. You stepped out of the way and watched us get hit by the train, Tasha said. My tubes are scarred. Naomi. The doctor says I might never have kids. That's on you. That's your legacy. The words hit me like a physical slap. Infertility. I hadn't wanted that. I had wanted them to suffer discomfort, embarrassment, maybe a scare. I hadn't wanted to alter the trajectory of their lives forever. I didn't give you the infection, I repeated, but my voice wavered. And I didn't make you sleep with him. No, Dr. Singh interjected softly. But you withheld medical information. Mrs. Anderson, purely from a human standpoint. It was cruel. Cruel, Tasha echoed. You're cruel, Naomi. I looked at them. My circle. My people. The women I had laughed with, traveled with, cried with. They were broken, sick, and terrified. And I had held the cure in my pocket for 14 days. Maybe I am, I said, my voice hardening to protect the soft, guilty center of my soul. Maybe you made me cruel. You broke my trust, my marriage, and my reality. You don't get to dictate how I survive the wreckage. I turned to leave. If I can't have a baby, Tasha yelled after me, her voice breaking, I will never forgive you. I will sue you for every penny you have. I walked down the hospital corridor, the sound of Tasha's sobbing chasing me to the elevator. I pressed the button, my hand shaking uncontrollably. I had wanted justice. I had gotten vengeance. And standing in that elevator, watching the numbers tick down, I realized I wasn't sure I could tell the difference anymore. The news spread through our social circles like a virus, faster and more virulent than the chlamydia itself. In a city of millions, our specific drama somehow felt like small-town gossip. It started with a mutual friend seeing Derek at the pharmacy. Then a cousin of Brianna's posted a vague, angry status on Facebook about fake friends who let you die. Within a week, the narrative was out. Did you hear about Naomi? Her husband cheated with 3 of her friends. And she knew they had an STD and didn't tell them. The court of public opinion was divided, swift, and merciless. At work, the atmosphere shifted. I walked into the break room, and conversations died instantly. People I had known for years looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear. I was the woman who had been scorned, yes, but I was also the woman who had pushed the nuclear button. I heard Tasha is suing, a colleague whispered loudly near the copier. Can you imagine? Knowing someone is sick and just watching. Yeah, but they slept with her husband. I'd have done worse, another replied. I kept my head down. I threw myself into spreadsheets and quarterly reports. Work became my sanctuary because numbers didn't have morals. Numbers didn't judge. The lawsuit arrived 3 weeks later. Tasha made good on her threat. She was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress and medical negligence. Attorney Rodriguez was furious but energized. It's a nuisance suit, she said, pacing her office. But it's dangerous because of the emotional component. A jury might hate you, Naomi. Even if the law is on your side, juries are human. They see 3 sick women and 1 cold wife. So what do? We drag Derek through the mud. We make sure the jury understands that he is the vector. He is the liar. You were a traumatized victim acting in self-preservation. The divorce proceedings became a war of attrition. Derek's lawyer, a slick man with a cheap suit, tried to leverage the duty to warn argument to deny me alimony. He argued I had unclean hands. My client admits to adultery, the lawyer argued in a preliminary hearing. But Mrs. Anderson's vindictiveness shows a character flaw that contributed to the breakdown of the marriage. She abandoned the partnership long before she left the house. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Hollowell, looked over her spectacles at Derek. "Counselor, are you suggesting that Mrs. Anderson's failure to notify her husband's mistresses of an infection he gave them is equivalent to his multiple infidelities?" "We are suggesting it speaks to her intent to harm, Your Honor." "I see." Judge Hollowell turned to me. "Mrs. Anderson, why did you wait?" I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. "Because I was angry, Your Honor. Because I was scared. And because I didn't think I owed my protection to the women who were destroying my life." The room was silent. "Honesty," the judge said. "Rare in this courtroom." The legal battle dragged on for months. I lost my book club. 2 members stopped speaking to me because they were cousins with Nicole. I was uninvited from a college reunion. My own mother called, sounding pained. "Naomi, honey, did you really know?" "Yes, Mom." "Oh, sweetie. That's a heavy thing to carry." It was heavy. It was a lead vest I wore everywhere. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Walsh. "You're looking for permission to forgive yourself," Dr. Walsh said during our 3rd session. "I don't know if I deserve it. Tasha might be infertile. Brianna has chronic pain. And you have a shattered life. You didn't cast the first stone, Naomi. You just refused to catch it." Finally, 6 months after the explosion, the ruling came down. Judge Hollowell dismissed Tasha's lawsuit. She ruled that while my actions might be morally complex, there was no legal duty for a betrayed spouse to warn a third party of risks associated with the affair. In the divorce, I won the house, which I immediately sold, my full retirement, and a significant portion of our savings. Derek was left with his debt, his shame, and his medical bills. It was a total legal victory. But when I walked out of the courthouse, blinking in the bright afternoon sun, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. I was rich in assets and vindication, but I was spiritually bankrupt. Derek tried to approach me on the courthouse steps. He looked older, broken. "Naomi." I didn't stop. "I'm sorry," he called out. "For everything." I paused and turned. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you got sick. You're sorry you lost. I miss you," he whispered. "You miss the woman who cooked your dinner and believed your lies," I said. "She doesn't exist anymore. You killed her." I got into my car and drove away, leaving him standing there, a footnote in a story he thought he was writing. I bought a condo in a part of the city I had never lived in. It was a deliberate choice. I wanted no ghosts here. No memories of Derek picking out paint colors. No echoes of Tasha's laughter at a dinner party. The condo was modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows and stark, clean lines. I decorated it in blues and grays. Cool colors. I told myself it was peaceful. My therapist, Dr. Walsh, suggested it was because I was still freezing people out. "You're building a fortress, Naomi," she said. "Safe is better than happy," I replied. "Is it?" I spent my evenings alone. I read books. I cooked elaborate meals for one. I hiked on weekends with a group of strangers who knew me only as Naomi with the good trail mix. I didn't date. I didn't let anyone get close enough to hurt me. 8 months after the divorce, I ran into Brianna. It was inevitable, I suppose. The city is big, but not infinite. I was at a high-end grocery store, reaching for a carton of almond milk, when I saw her. She looked different. Thinner. Her hair was cut short. She froze when she saw me. For a moment, I thought she would run. Or scream. Instead, she just stood there, clutching a basket of kale. Naomi. Brianna. The air between us crackled with unsaid things. How are you? She asked. It was absurd. Polite chit-chat over the wreckage of our lives. I'm well. You? Getting there. She hesitated, then looked down at her shoes. The doctors say I'm okay now. The pain is manageable. I'm glad, I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. I didn't want her to be in pain anymore. I just didn't want her to be part of my life. Naomi, She looked up, her eyes wet. I'm so sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I miss you. I miss us. I looked at her, this woman who had held my hand when my father died, who had toasted me at my wedding. I felt a phantom ache in my chest, the ghost of friendship. But when I looked at her, I also saw the messages. Boring. Frigid. I don't hate you anymore, Brianna, I said softly. Hope flared in her eyes. Really? Yes. But I don't forgive you. And I don't want to be your friend. The hope died, replaced by resignation. I understand. I hope you have a good life, I said. I really do. Just have it away from me. I walked away, leaving my cart behind because my hands were shaking too hard to push it. I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried for 10 minutes. Not for the betrayal, but for the finality of it. It was the funeral of a friendship I had already buried. A month later, I went to a work conference in Denver. It was a relief to be somewhere where nobody knew the scorned wife scandal. I met Julian at the hotel bar. He was a consultant from Seattle, tall with kind eyes and a laugh that rumbled in his chest. We started talking about the keynote speaker, then about travel, then about life. He asked me to dinner. I almost said no. The instinct to run, to protect, was overwhelming. But then I remembered Dr. Walsh's voice. You didn't cast the first stone, but you have to drop it eventually. Yes, I said. Dinner would be nice. We went to a quiet Italian place. Julian was attentive. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look over my shoulder at other women. So, he said over dessert, you have a look. A look. Yeah. Like you've survived a war. There's a steeliness in your eyes. I swirled my wine. I have survived a war. A very messy, very public one. Do you want to talk about it? No, I said. Not tonight. Tonight, I just want to be Naomi. Not the victim. Not the villain. He smiled, raising his glass. To Naomi. Just Naomi. We dated long distance for months. It was slow. It was terrifying. Every time he didn't text back immediately, my heart hammered. Every time he mentioned a female friend, I spiraled. But Julian was patient. He was transparent. He gave me his passcode without me asking. I have nothing to hide, he said. And I know you need to know that. He was healing me, not by fixing the past, but by showing me a different future. Year had passed since the divorce. I was stable. I was successful at work. I had Julian, who had recently moved to my city, not just for me, but for a job opportunity. We were happy. But the final ghost remained. I hadn't seen Tasha since the hospital. I knew through the grapevine that she had moved to the suburbs, that she was still single, and that the fertility issues were real. That guilt was a stone I still carried, smoothed by time but heavy nonetheless. I ran into her at a flower market on a Saturday morning. The sun was shining. The air smelled of peonies and rain. I was buying sunflowers for Julian. Naomi. The voice was unmistakable. I turned. Tasha stood there. She looked older than her 30 years. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She wasn't wearing red. She was wearing beige. Tasha. We stood amidst the buckets of blooms, two casualties of a war neither of us had fully won. I heard you're seeing someone, she said. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. I am. He's good. That's good. She shifted her weight. I'm starting IVF next month. Using a donor. It's going to be hard. Expensive. She looked at me, waiting. Waiting for an apology? An offer of help? I hope it works out for you, I said. You'll be a good mother. Tasha laughed. A brittle sound. Will I? I wasn't a very good friend. No. You weren't. Do you regret it? She asked suddenly. The question hung in the air, sharp and dangerous. Not warning us. Do you regret it? I looked at the sunflowers in my arms. I thought about the nights I spent screaming into my pillow. I thought about the lawyer fees. I thought about the look on Julian's face when he looked at me, like I was precious. I regret that we're here, I said carefully. I regret that Derek happened to us. But do I regret protecting myself first? No. Tasha nodded slowly. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. You're so cold, Naomi. You used to be warm. I had to freeze to survive, I said. The cold protected me. I miss the warm Naomi, she whispered. She's gone, Tasha. You and Derek killed her. This is who survived. I stepped closer, just for a moment. But this version of me? She's happy. And she hopes you find happiness too. Goodbye, Tasha. I walked away. I didn't look back. And for the first time, walking away didn't feel like fleeing. It felt like moving forward. That night, Julian and I cooked dinner. I made the lemon chicken he loved. We drank wine on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle like distant stars. You seem lighter, Julian observed, resting his hand on my knee. I saw Tasha today, I said. He stiffened slightly. He knew the story. He knew the damage. How was it? It was sad. But it was over. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt done. That's a big step, he said softly. She called me cold, I admitted. Do you think I'm cold? Julian looked at me, his eyes searching mine. I think you have boundaries of steel. I think you don't suffer fools. But cold? No. You're the warmest thing in my life. I leaned into him, letting his warmth seep into my bones. Boundaries, not coldness, I whispered. I like that. 18 months post-divorce. The timeline of grief is non-linear, but I had reached a plateau of peace. My hiking group was planning a trip to Patagonia. Work offered me a promotion to director. My mother finally stopped asking about Derek and started asking when she could meet Julian. I was cleaning out an old junk drawer in the kitchen when I found it. An old flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop out of curiosity. It was the backup. The screenshots. The videos. The evidence of the affair. I opened the folder. I looked at the photos of Tasha and Derek. They looked like strangers now. Actors in a bad movie I had watched a lifetime ago. The anger that used to boil in my blood was gone, replaced by a dull, distant pity. They had destroyed so much for so little. I dragged the folder to the trash bin on my desktop. I right-clicked. Empty trash. It deleted in seconds. No fanfare. Just gone. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Hi Naomi. It's Nicole. I heard you're doing well. I just wanted to say, I'm finally okay too. I forgive you. I hope you can forgive me someday. I stared at the screen. I forgive you. The audacity. As if I were the one who needed absolution. I started to type a reply. I don't need your forgiveness. I backspaced. I'm glad you're okay. I backspaced. I put the phone down. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. That was the new Naomi. I didn't engage in battles that didn't matter. I didn't owe them my words, my anger, or my forgiveness. My silence was my answer. Julian walked in the front door, carrying groceries. Hey, I got the good cheese and the wine you like. He saw me sitting at the table, the laptop open. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, closing the laptop with a snap. Just cleaning up old files. Ready for the hike tomorrow? He asked, unpacking the bags. Born ready. I went to him, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind, resting my cheek against his back. He smelled of rain and comfort. Julian. Yeah, I love you. He turned in my arms, a smile lighting up his face. I love you too, Naomi. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. I still had trust issues. I still checked bank statements with a little too much scrutiny. I still flinched when plans changed last minute. I was scarred. My fallopian tubes were fine, but my heart had scar tissue thick enough to stop a bullet. But I was standing. I was breathing. I was loving. The duty to warn wasn't just a legal concept, I realized. It was a moral one. I had failed to warn them, yes. But looking back, I realized I had finally learned to warn myself. I had learned to listen to the red flags, to value my own safety over politeness, to choose my own survival. I walked out onto the balcony one last time that evening. The city was loud and chaotic and beautiful. Somewhere out there, Derek was paying off debts. Somewhere, Tasha was giving herself hormone injections. Somewhere, Brianna and Nicole were rebuilding their lives. And here in the center of it all was me. Not the victim. Not the villain. Just Naomi. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. If you like the story, please subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.